Cheers. Okay.
Oh, good now.
Hi there. Brian, Sylvia, and I probably were the longest in the tooth with the spey rods at this event. Mine goes back as far as 1985, and I got a really cool story from 1985 that was my introduction to a spey rod.
George, I was 4 in 1985.
Yeah, well, you're only 14 now, but you're big for your age. I worked for Kaufman Streamborn. You guys might remember the Kaufman stores of Seattle and Portland. And a guy from Hardy came into the store, and we had never seen anybody from Hardy. And he had this thing called a spey rod, and it was a 14 for 9. And he came in and talked about it a little bit, and he offered to leave it. So would anybody like to fish this? And you know, how old was I then? Probably I think I was about 23 years old. And I went, I will. And so I volunteered to go play with it. I took it up the very next morning, up on the Skycomish, on a run that the previous Sunday I'd caught a winter run steelhead and some pretty robust chum salmon on. Now, the only problem was, I had received no instruction on fly line for that rod. This guy didn't tell me shit, all stupid. Okay. But it was a 9 weight, and the steelhead line of the age then, a lot of you will remember, was a teeny 300. So naturally, I chose to suit up that 14'9" with a teeny 300. Well, you can imagine it took all of about 5 to 7 minutes out there on this run for me to be a blistering hot mess. I mean, it was bad. It was nasty. I would have given you a crisp $20 bill for a spinning rod right then and there. But I fought the urge to go back to the truck and get my trusty 896 Sage RP and put that same line on that rod, which I'd fished that Sunday. And so my introduction to spey was rough and certainly not good. I would not pick up a spey rod for another 5 years. And when I picked up my next spey rod, I was asked to do a class. One of my dealers had asked me if I could teach a class. And naturally, as as the swashbuckling sage rep of the Pacific Northwest, I said, yeah, I can do that. And I didn't know if I could. But on the Friday afternoon before my class, I'd gotten my mitts on this VHS tape called Focus on casting. And Hugh Focus is a really famous instructor from the United Kingdom. And at 3:30 in the afternoon, I plugged in that tape and watched it. And at 4:30 Pacific that afternoon, I plugged it in a second time. So I was checked out on spey casting. And I taught the class the next day. Well, I taught the double spey and the single spey, which brings me to a really great point. Virtually everybody here who's ever had a single-handed rod in their hand as a trout angler has been single spey and double spey casting for years and didn't know it. You've been doing it. Because anytime this water's moving, which turns out the ditch is moving, you move that rod to roll cast, you in essence have performed a spey cast. So it's funny how you can all arrive at this point. And so there's a little background on my deal. So, you know, I fish spey rods as much as I can. Not necessarily because they're more effective, but because they're more interesting. This is the archery of fishing. This is a bow, essentially, as it relates to fly rods. It's just way more interesting, okay? If you want to catch fish on this river, you've got nymph indicator options, dry fly options that will put numbers on the board. I mean, straight up. But this tends to be a different animal, like probably everybody that's been here has said, but it's more interesting. And to me, if you've been doing this a long time, more interesting becomes just that, more interesting. So in the Pacific Northwest, where I'm from, let's see, what's today? It's May 5th. Okay, well we're basically 6 weeks away from real El Primo king salmon opportunity in the state of Alaska. You could throw British Columbia into that, to some degree, you could throw some streams in northern Oregon into that bucket right now for Chinook. However, the Alaska kings, followed by the British Columbia kings, are the most grabby swung fly kings on planet Earth. The Alaska kings are absolutely the grabbiest. And I've been to Chile and fished them in South America, and they're basically Thule transplants, and they're a different animal down there. They're not the same as an Alaska king. And so I love fishing kings with the bigger rods, 14 foot for an 8, 13 foot for an 8, 12 and a half 8, 12 foot 9, occasional 14 for 9, occasional 15 for 10. Big weapons. And so the first rod I want to talk about today is, this is a 14 foot 7 weight. It's a Sage X, 7140-4. How many folks here have fished the Clearwater? Okay, so roughly half of you. The Clearwater is actually my favorite steelhead stream in North America, at least in the United States. I'll take the Dean River in British Columbia, please. But the Clearwater is my favorite river in the lower 48. And if it didn't have Highway 12 buzzing beside it, it'd probably be my favorite steelhead stream anywhere. And the beauty of the Clearwater is that you could literally come off the bank and step on a fish 2.5 feet off the shore, or you could hook one halfway across that ditch. And the Clearwater is not, particularly at the water height today here on the Mo, this is kind of vintage Clearwater looking ditch right here, right now. So there's no such thing as casting too far. There is no such thing. You can huck as far as you want to go, because you could hook one right there, whatever 70-degree angle at 65 feet, 107 feet off a 126 foot cast, blah, blah, blah. So that's one of the reasons I like that river, is because no cast is too far and no cast is out of the game. It's in the game, okay? So, whoop, got some gack. It's an Alaska term if you've never heard that. I got gack. I'm a leader. Okay, get the gack off. So, one thing I always like to talk about with these spey rods is, how many of you guys archery hunt? Okay. So, when you become an archery hunter, you start to pay attention to wind like you never paid attention to it. Rifle hunters pay some attention to it. The really good ones pay a lot. But rifle hunters tend not to pay a ton of attention to it. But I tell you, when you get one of these things in your hands, you're going to pay attention to wind like you never did before. And the reason why is, if you fail to pay attention to it, you will pay a heavy price. What is the heavy price? You can discover what it's like to put a fly squarely in your ass. And if you haven't cast your hat off your head yet, you ain't been out here long enough. And you will become what I call the spey quarterback. The spey quarterback. And the spey quarterback comes to the ditch, and it's essentially his line of scrimmage. This is a line of scrimmage. And the wind and the current represent the defense. And if you want to have an offense, you better pay attention to the defense. So you will find that you pay attention to factors like wind. What direction is the wind coming from? First of all, is there wind? Well, we're in Montana, so therefore there's wind. What's the wind doing? What's the water depth? What's the water speed? Those three things have a mammoth impact on what you will choose to do with these. Again, you will become the spey quarterback, and you will learn to audible. And for those of you who don't know football language, audible is change the play at the line of scrimmage. And you will audible with these things in order to keep the fly out of your ear. Okay? So, right now, because it's after 11 a.m. in the west, the thermals have started, and because we got some cloud cover, the wind's not really going. If it was sunny, we'd have the wind going at probably a higher level, but there's some level of wind coming downstream. Just there's a skosh. And the minute that that's going on, then my ability to throw off this upstream shoulder is somewhat in jeopardy because that wind is coming down, right? Now I got a big stick here, 14 foot. So with this much stick, I can throw that, okay? Even though that wind's coming downstream. This rod likes more thread, so let's give it more. Okay, so I can do that, but if that wind velocity was to say double, fish the ditch, everybody's eligible. Okay, that's out there, and this rod's got another 10 to 15 feet in it, I'd say, okay? I threw a cast with this rod last year on the Kenai fishing rainbows that I actually measured. It made 126. So this is a rod that's capable of really, really, really casting. Okay, and this cast I'm doing is called a snap T. Okay, it wants more. Okay,
Give it more.
give it more. Bring it. So you guys are probably watching me strip in all this line. You're probably thinking, how's he manage all that shit? Well, here's what I don't want to do is just randomly strip it in. Because look at it go downstream. It's going downstream slowly, but downstream. Now, if I try to make a cast with my running line all the way down there, I encounter drag. Drag upon the fly, or the line. Didn't allow it to shoot. In fact, it kind of boomeranged it. Okay? So, I went to Washington State University. I'm a Coug. But going to Washington State, it's a lot like going to high school for an additional 4 years. An extra 4 in high school. So, I was a criminal justice major. Actually, I was a major in pheasants and deer is actually what I majored in there. But things need to be simple for Wazoo guys. And so, I'm going to set up a line control system for that shooting line that is, at the end of the day, very simple. So somewhere between that reel and the back of that head is a count. And I'm going to go with 14. I'm going to wager a guess it's 14. Okay? So I'm going to run what I call the 50% rule. 50% of 14 is 7. Even the Wazoo kid can get that. Okay? So here we go. So strip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7's half of 14. I'm going to coil. That's my coil strip. There's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Why 13? I've got a fair amount of, I've got the overhang I'm seeking. But I don't like 14 or 13. 13's an even number, so there's 14. Now Washington State 50% rule math is in session. Now, you notice that the amount of line there is roughly half of what it was. Big man, get to work out there. So that cutting that in half allowed me to set up a form to shoot that line, right? Where do you start that at? Probably at 8, for sure at 10. Do you need it at 6? Probably not. You don't need it until that line dribbling downstream has reached about the 3/4 point of the length of your rod. So if this is 14, I've got X before I better cut the deck, so to speak. The other reason to play the count, or the 50% rule, is that whether you're on the Mo, you're on Oregon's Deschutes, you're in Terra del Fuego fishing sea run browns, which is best done with these things, you're going to fish early, you're going to fish late. Early, late. Early, late is when they like to bite, and usually have low light, particularly late. You have falling light, not gaining, falling. And there's a point where if you don't play the count, you'll be going, well, I think it's coming. Yeah, I don't know, there's green shooting line, and here comes the Tiffany blue. I see it, okay, all right, okay. There it is. Did I look stupid doing that? On a scale of 1 to stupid, it was pretty much full on, okay? So, if I count it, I don't need to look. It automatically comes in there. It's automatically in the right spot, which is really, really cool. See you later, bye. So that's some things to manage your line, okay? I'm not going to talk a ton about trout spey because there's been some incredibly good speakers here, and Brian Sylvie coming behind me is yet another one. So I'm going to talk about more stuff to do with the rods and such. Okay? So the spey quarterback will constantly pay attention to the environment. Okay? One of the reasons why you get a spey rod, at least in the steelhead theater, is so that you don't have to wade out to here. You don't have to wade out to here. Although I fished with a sports med doctor from Phoenix, who was a walk-on fullback for Joe Paterno at Penn State, and Tom, doesn't matter if we're on the Dean or in Tierra del Fuego, Tom charges out until he is at what I call the warning track. And then he commences to cast. And I go, Tom, you remember the spey rod? We got him so that we didn't oblivious. He never listens. He once caught a 35-pound hen sea run brown trout in Tierra del Fuego, and at that moment of that hold, I quit trying to work with him. I figured, horseshoe up this guy's ass, leave him alone. Okay? You don't have to wade deep with these things. You don't want to wade deep with these things. Why? Oftentimes the fish are very, very close to the bank. This high water is an automatic given of push in by the trout. Steelhead fishers, first thing in the morning, are wise not to get over their ankles, and that first cast is literally 10 feet, maybe the sink tip out of the tip. It's play close, work far. Okay. You know, certain species like king salmon and Atlantic salmon are usually, those things are out in the ditch, so get ready to hook. But steelhead and trout oftentimes are particularly in low light, okay? But water speed matters a lot too. So yesterday, there was a gentleman here, he was upstream with a group of 4 guys, and he was throwing a snap tee right above the bathroom. There's a spot up there with some sort of stake in the water. And he was hitting his line. He was making a snap tee, came around, hit it. He was like married to this tailing loop thing. And I said to him, I said, Ira, I said, you're getting frustrated. I can see it. You're going to turn that rod into a javelin here shortly. And it's an echo, so go ahead and throw it so you can come back and talk to us about sage. No, I didn't say that. But I said to him, I said, listen, you got a phenomena going on here that the problem is actually not you. He goes, what do you mean? I said, the current speed. You're throwing a cast against current speed plus this downstream wind. So if we look at this part of the ditch we're in, the water right here is relatively calm. There's not a lot of speed here, but you go out there 5 feet, the speed's changed. You go out there about 10 to 12 feet, it's really changed. You take that with this downstream wind, you're not throwing an upstream shoulder cast. Because between the current bearing down, the wind bearing down, you are setting yourself up, say it with me, fly in my ass. It's coming. And it's coming at high velocity, which means it's going through the Gore-Tex. And you better find some tape. Okay? So, I said, Ira, here's how we're going to correct this. We're going to throw a double spey. I don't know if he had heard of a double spey. And I said, hey, the good news is there's a cast for a downstream wind. The better news is it's the single easiest spey cast to learn. It's the easiest one to learn of all of them. So I laid it on him. Anchor, D-loop, bolt. I said, now, this wind pushing down of you is downstream of you. This current pushing down of you is no longer a nemesis, okay? So that's all part of being the spey quarterback. You got to read the factors, the wind, the water depth, the water speed, okay? Because they all have an impact. if you do wade deep, and there will be places like, I don't know if this is just me being me, but if I look at the ditch today and I go, okay, we're over here, it's river left, and I look up river and I see all those willows, and I see the kind of the rocky bank, I would inherently want to go over there. I don't know why. Maybe I just want to get away from all of you and go over there. I don't know. But I would want to go over there. And my wife would say to me, oh, he's going to go do the adventure wading. Because that's adventure wading side. Okay? And there will be times in adventure wading where you're just barely off the bank, but you're like to here. Okay? And it's not because you're trying to hero wade, it's just that's what the ditch is. Okay? But I kind of like the looks of it over there, and I have a feeling that there's some fish, particularly in this higher water, would be up against that bank. Or at least it seems like it could be good. But if I went over there and I'm suddenly wading up to here, the whole arc and angle of the cast is going to change. Things are going to have to get tighter. Things are going to get a little taller. It's going to be different because I'm not going to have this wide open back loop for my D loop here. I ain't going to have that coming down that willow bank. It's not going to be there. And when I get on that riprap over there, it's not going to be there. So I frankly wouldn't want a big rod like this. In fact, Miss Tate, can I have the 4-weight? So I'm going to go from a 14 for a 7, which would be a great Clearwater steelhead rod. I'm going to go to what, to me, would be a great Missouri trout spey rod with bigger than average streamers. Okay? The one thing that's not really been talked about today are flies. Well, they've been talked about, but here's a little box of flies. This is not my inner sanctum box. It's deep in the closet in Anchorage. Nobody sees it. My wife always gets first water, but never ever the best fly in the box. In fact, that was in our vows. This fly box has got what I call little, medium, big. Little stuff, medium stuff, big stuff. And all those flies have strategical purpose, say, for this trout spey game. But, there's that wind. We're definitely casting off the bottom shoulder. These flies also have potential to be cast on given rods, and some rods not so much, okay? The small flies could be cast on a 2, a 3, a 4, even a 5-weight trout spey. And by the way, trout spey to me is any spey rod or switch rod that's essentially 2 through 6 weight. 6 weight being the real upper end of it, 2 weight being the ultralight end of it, 3 and 4 kind of being the gut bucket, okay? But these flies kind of tell a story of how these flies will inevitably cast on these different rods, small, medium, big. So I'll pass this around. Don't bother stealing any. It's one of those things where the cops set it up with the purple shit. You know, if you see your hands are all purple in 10 minutes, so if I see you with purple hands, I know what happened. Okay, Fred. Thank you, Tate. Tate's my rod Vanna. Okay, so this is an 11'6", 4-weight Sage 1. It's a switch rod. The reality of this switch rod is, Fred and I will tell you from Alaska lore and legend, this is the OG, original gangster trout spey right here. It's a switch rod, but really it's baby spey, hence trout spey. Of the 15 rainbows that I've landed over 30 inches in the state of Alaska, the single biggest one I got on this at 33.5 by 17. So this is a 4-weight switch rod, baby spey, but it plays more like a 6.5 weight in terms of connotating what is this thing to a single hander. So it plays bigger than you think. As a 4-weight with a 325 grain Skagit short on it, it's capable of throwing semi-dead sparrows with hooks in them. Okay? Maybe not, the sex dungeon from Kelly Gallup, But we can get kind of, I can throw anything in that box with this one, okay? All right. And the next one I'll talk about will be the ultralight. So as I come down that side with this small rod, and by the way, downstream wind does not know which current. Meaning, this is river left, downstream wind. That's river right, downstream wind, which I can simulate by wading a little deeper. If I leave the premise, find me before the next dam. Okay, so this is river right, okay? That's what she looks like over there. But with this downstream wind, I'm going to still throw off that downstream shoulder. Okay, so in the scheme of things, nobody panic here. The fly line is going to enter your airspace. Here's a double spey. Nobody's hitting. No, Paul, don't be jittery. That's a double spey. Off my right shoulder is a right-hander simulated from that side based on downstream wind. Okay, so keep that in mind. But if I was coming down those willows, my world's going to get a lot smaller because I don't have all this room. And so normally with a spey rod, you're setting up, you see the blue line coming off the rod tip? That's the beginning of the shooting line, or what we like to call the overhang, okay? And so the overhang there is roughly 18 inches, okay? And with that overhang, I can kind of throw a D-loop, and I've got some room to work with here, right? Yep. I'm not going to have that room coming down there. I'm not going to have that room coming down 50 yards from here. So I might actually have to pull that head into the rod. And here I'm going to throw one left-handed, but I'm going to go really tight. And you'll notice that that D-loop was barely behind my butt. Because as I come down there or there, that's really all I'm going to have to work with, okay? Now you probably said he threw that left-handed. Anybody notice that? Okay, so I'm a big cack-handed caster. What does cack mean? Cack's kind of an old school term where I'm making this double spey, but I'm coming across my body and throwing it. And I love to cast cack-handed. Why? A, I'm really good at it. B, it irritates the shit out of the English. And C, it is an alignment advantage of strategical purpose. That's a mouthful for a Washington State kid right there, ain't it? Now, what do I possibly mean by that? So, when I cast a spey rod for the purpose of swinging the fly, more often than not, my target angle is 70 degrees. So if straight across is 90, so let's just say that, you see the yellow sign? That's 90. That tree is 80. And that pitchfork branch on the bank, that's about 70. I like 70. I'm a big advocate of 70. And it just so happens that a cack-handed double spey coming off that shoulder goes right to 70. It's like I couldn't shoot it any straighter over at that. So I like cack-handed cast because of that strategical alignment, okay? Now believe me, you get around some people from not necessarily the Scandinavians, but the English, man, they see that. They'll walk up to you and they'll go, lad, that's rubbish. It's complete rubbish. You've got to learn to cast with your left hand. I go, listen, man, 200 years ago you wanted to have an argument and it didn't go worth a shit then either. So stop it. Okay? So, but I like the cack-handed cast because of the strategical initiative of the placement. Why do I like 70 degrees? Here's why I like it. With trout, they will run stuff down. But when you throw a 90-degree cast right across from you, That thing lands with the insta belly. Did you see how that thing landed? Everybody see that? I mean, you guys are up in stadium seating. You can see the stuff better than me. But that thing landed like this, meaning the belly is coming downstream first, which means the fly is hauling butt. Now for Bobo and Browntown, those guys will run it down. They're like, oh, and out they go. Winter steelhead, sea-run brown trout, and Terra del Fuego, Chinook salmon, not so much. Small guys will, little guys. We're not looking for the little guys. We're looking for the grandes. And the grandes they're not going to chase that thing, at least not very often. Furthermore, the fly shows an undesirable profile, meaning if I throw there and I do not manipulate via the men's cycle that fly back to a straight edge, that fly is going to come downstream. So if that speaker is a fish, reasonably good size one, black trout, that fly is coming down towards him like this. I want that fly coming towards him like this. I want it broadside, and I want it slow. I don't want it coming face or head first, non-broadside and fast. I want it broadside and slow. The best shot at getting that accomplished is to throw a 70-degree cast, because it is pre-aligned, and a men there, that thing is going to be broadside. It's going to come slow. That's a great combination, swinging a fly, broadside, slow. Okay? So that's why I like the cack-handed cast, because of the alignment. Okay? All right. 4-weight switch rod, original gangster trout spey, upper end of the size. Probably a little bigger than the trout really warrant, but throws a wide variance of flies represented by anything in that box. Okay, makes sense? Tate, 2-weight please. Everyone should be so lucky to have a rod, Vanna.
Need water. Need water.
Do I need water?
Yeah.
I'm in the ditch.
No, we got you left.
No, I'm okay. Okay. 2-weight trout spey. Little guy. Small ball. This is a Reddington hydrogen. It's a little 2, but it plays bigger than it sounds. Okay? It's a 2-weight, but in essence, it's a 4.5 weight as it relates to a single-handed rod. When you really think about trout fishing, whether we're on the Deschutes in Oregon, the Missouri, South Fork of the Snake in Idaho, Platte in Wyoming, blah, 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 most of the trout we are likely to encounter are 10 to 20 inches, 12 to 24 inches. You know, Alaska, that number moves a fair bit. It's probably 16 to 28 inches for 85% of what's going to go on. But down here, this is really, really, really relevant. It's also really, really, really fun. Okay? And this is a little 2-weight. I've got a little Skagit head on it. And when you get guys like me that are from, you know, the Pacific Northwest, we tend to have Skagits on stuff a lot, okay? We're fishing sink tips a lot, okay? You know, I realize here you're going to have a lot of opportunity with soft tackles on floating lines, but we're tending to fish, you know, bigger fly, stuff like that out there. Or as I like to say, never bow hunt when rifle's open, okay? So, this is a small, small stick, but you'll be surprised at how this thing will cast. Here's that same double spey. Bump. That's roughly 60, 62 feet. How do you know it's that far, George? I live with a rangefinder in my hand. So I'm pretty good at that. Okay, this thing is capable. I don't know what the upper end is with this because I haven't really tried. Okay, you saw the wind push that one. Okay, that's the drawback of the little guy. Is the wind will have its day with that. Did you guys notice when I made that anchor move, I sat there and looked at it for a bit? Okay. Anybody can tell me why I did that? So I keep it out of my, say, left ear. So that's something I want to talk about. So regardless of rod type or rod size, we're not all going to make perfect cast all the time. Even the great ones don't hit every single one of them. Okay? But the beauty of when you blow a cast is your ability to recover that cast. Because as I like to tell people, it's only a mistake if you make it twice. Okay? So, when I did that on that double spey, I essentially put too much energy in it, and I pulled that one's okay. I can live with that one. Okay? But if I put that anchor above me, I've essentially thrown the anchor too far. So my options are, as a spey quarterback, I could just go ahead, depending on my read on the wind. If I did that, well, I could do a little poke and get it. And you up there in the grandstands would go, he just threw a Perry poke cast. And I'm down here going, I got out of that wreck. Okay, so that's what we call a recovery cast. And I waited on it on the one that I did blow because I simply wanted the yarn representing the fly to go from a non-castable position upstream to below me off the shoulder of intent to make the cast. Hence a recovery cast. Okay, all right. So, any questions so far? Yes, sir.
What if you blow it with a T14 or a T11, a high, fast sinking tip? How do you recover from that if you blow past yourself?
Perry poke.
Perry poke again?
Yeah, Perry poke. Now, there's probably, how many people in this crowd, honest to goodness gracious, have heard of the Perry poke? Okay, roughly 2/3 of you. That's pretty good. Okay, I think if we traveled further east to say Nebraska, that percentage would go down. Okay, so Carl Perry from Gresham, Oregon, came up with a cast called the Perry poke. And Carl didn't wake up one fine Saturday morning and go, well, by God, today's the day I'm inventing a cast. I'm doing it today, and I'm doing it before 2 o'clock. No, Carl blew a cast. He blew a cast. I mean, he blew one. Carl was throwing a single spey, which would look like that, which is, believe it or not, the single hardest spey cast to learn by far. Carl was throwing one like that, but Carl, that particular day, and now this wind is really picking up coming downstream, so I am about to be in the zone of peril. But I want to show you guys this. So Carl went to make a single spey, blew it, went, shoot. That was cool. And basically, he took a cast that he had completely blown in a fit of disgust, slapped it down, which in turn reassembled the anchor, went ahead, came back through it, cast discovered. Perry poke. It's called the Perry poke. Now, a guy named Ed Ward was a longtime Alaska, Kamchatka, Washington State guide. Ed Ward perfected that cast into what is known as the Perry poke, which looks like that, okay? Which is a fabulous cast with Skagit type lines, T11, T14, T17 sink tips, large flies, lead-eye flies, cone head flies, blah, blah, blah. It's a great cast for that. But that cast came off a blown cast. Carl Perry developed the Perry poke off a blown cast. So that's a great way to recover that sink tip, okay? And sometimes you end up doing a, say to do a Perry poke properly, you don't really bring that fly, you bring it more or less perpendicular to you. But if you were to kind of get it too far away from you, and you made that move and you went, boom, way up there, you could go poke, poke. And it would all seem good. And you guys would be up there going, oh, George Cook just did a Perry poke double.
Hokey pokey.
Yeah, super double poke. And, well, really, all I was trying to do was recover the cast versus abort it. Because abort is an option versus in the ear. Because in the ear is always right there to be had. Okay? All righty. So today you've seen me cast 3 rods, 14 foot for 7. Think Idaho's Clearwater. 11 foot 6'4". Think upper end of the ball game in Trout Spey. Kind of almost the original gangster type Trout Spey stick. And you've seen small ball. The Reddington Hydrogen 2.8, okay? So you can kind of see how all these kind of play regionally, how they play into flies, strategy surrounding fly, type, use, castability, distance sought, lots of things along those aspects, okay? Any questions? Anything you want to see again? Okay, all right. Thanks for coming. And up next is the illustrious Brian Sylvie.
Thanks, George.